Hello, we're going to welcome you to YouTube today, and we'll get started here in just a minute. Good afternoon. I'm going to start welcoming you here to GovDirections and to GovSchool this afternoon, and I'm getting everything ready here. But just as a precaution, you are live on YouTube this afternoon, and I would maintain your status unless you have a question, and that will help out with background noise. Yeah, I'm working from my home visit today, so I will give you a quick wave, but I'll keep the background blocked in case anybody has any questions, or sometimes a little distracting where I'm working here. So we'll welcome you here to GovSchool, and we'll get started here in just one more minute. So good afternoon. My name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections, and we're here today to give you a presentation related to the RFP. This is one of my favorite sessions that I do, where we actually walk through an actual request for proposal, and I'm going to share some insight. GovDirections, of course, we're located in Atlanta, Georgia, and we've been in this sector since 1998. We serve just over 110,000 companies worldwide, and this particular session is being broadcast live on YouTube as well as through our Zoom meeting room. And so if you are in the Zoom meeting room, you can ask questions. I just ask that you maintain your mute status until you have a question. And if you do have that question, just raise your hand and I'll call on you as we go along. But this is meant to be an interactive experience. And I'm here today to answer questions that you might have. And as a part of today, what we're going to do is show you a couple of pieces of information. Our primary purpose is to identify the actual structure of a request for proposal. And I'm going to walk through each section and explain its importance. Okay. And in this process, I'm a big believer in experiential learning. So I'm going to show you an actual request for proposal as an example, and we're going to identify each section, and I'm going to call attention to the things that you need to be most concerned about. This is a recorded session, so you can pop back on at YouTube and see us a little later. It'll be available almost immediately. It's designed to give you some, once again, insight on how RFPs work in the government sector. And I always like to, quickly just point out a couple of things. First of all, our basic information. If you have a question, you can give me a call at 800-492-8523. I'll be glad to help you with any individual questions, because in government, it's supposed to be hard when you're working with. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Tom Hanks, League of Their Own. He was a coach of a softball team, and everybody loves to play softball. But if you really want to be a great softball player, you got to practice, practice, practice. And he reminded them that movie. It's a great movie if you have an opportunity to watch. I think there's been a remake of that recently, but it's one of my favorite quotes from League of Their Own. And so whenever you first come to the government sector, the first part of learning is, learn the different types of contracting instruments. Today, we're going to talk about the RFP, but there's others, you'll come across, and you need to be familiar with them in order to make sure that you don't miss opportunity. The first that I want to call attention to is the request for information. This, sometimes referred to also as a source of SALT, the RFP, is for making sure that there's a marketplace that's involved with the area that the government's trying to work. Okay, so they go out and they ask they tell you basically what they want and ask you to respond if you're able to fulfill that marketplace before they actually go out to bid oftentimes. And sometimes those RF requests for information, the source of salt, if there's only one or two, they potentially can just go straight to contract. So it's always important that you do not miss those. But the request for information is available to you. You need to have your capability statement ready to go, but it's a general call for responses from companies who can provide a service or supply. These are all oftentimes used when there's a new service or supply, or as well as an emergency requirement, like in a hurricane situation. I think we may have a new hurricane, a bad storm off of Florida right now. If they need somebody to get in there quickly in order to provide particular services, then they'll issue a general call for requests for information. You respond to them very quickly, and then you typically are hired on the spot. We saw these in situation with COVID when there was demand supply issues. And so whenever they need to make sure the supply out there, they'll issue those documents, and then you need to respond right away. As opposed to more requests for qualifications there, you are sending in information about your company. Oftentimes there's a specialty they're looking for. They're looking for a particular type of engineer. They're looking for a particular type of attorney. Also potential civil type requirements that you're in there. So you might have to be a specialty in painting or roofing or some particular qualifications you have to have in order to get on a pre-approved list. And so they'll issue those documents, and that can be an immediate contract or open-ended. A lot of times governments will use those to go out and submit request qualifications for a full year, and then they get you on a pre-approved list, and then individuals come in there and bid on can bid on projects as they go along. They're already on that list, or sometimes the governments just choose to call off that list, and they have a pre-approved rate of some sort. So make sure you respond to those, and oftentimes those are opened up for an entire year. You'll see those at GovDirections where they'll have like the 2023 due date or 2027 due date, and the government issues that call and just leaves it open as long as they have a need for the services. And then you have the invitation to quote, ITQs. These are oftentimes very quick. Sometimes they're just a simple phone call. They call 3 companies that qualify, and then you're able to respond to them, and they're able to hire you on the spot. If you come in maybe with a low bid. Other times it could be a quick turnaround, 3 or 4 or 5 days, asking you to respond. And once again, it's very short calls. Oftentimes they'll tell you exactly what they want. So that typically these type of requests, everybody understands what they need, and you're able to respond back in your industry and give them a quick price. Okay, almost always driven per price. Then, of course, we have the invitation to bid or request for bid. And this is a little bit more formal than the invitation to quote, where there might be additional specifications, and they want to make sure you meet all additional rules or conditions for the acquisition, and then they send the request out. But almost always something that they control in the process. They know exactly what they're looking for, and they're looking for, and also looking for a price-driven response. Sometimes tied to quality driven. So you're using price and quality. And you'll see those frequently I'm buying potentially maybe new tires or new cars, items that are individually driven, sometimes hourly driven rates. So we wanted to hire grounds and landscaping and on an hourly rate, and then also might issue an invitation to bid. So all of those there, sometimes individualized and governments fully understand how to use them. Other times, sometimes they merge together and become kind of a combination of the two. So you just be prepared to see that. So sometimes it's not as clear as you want it to be. But that leads us to the request for proposal. The RFP itself is a situation where government knows exactly kind of what they need to achieve, but they don't know exactly how to go about doing it. And you're the subject matter expert in this particular situation. And so what they do is they say, here's our objectives. Now, please tell us how you would propose to fulfill that objective. And so they're oftentimes this is probably the dominant way governments will procure. So it's important that you understand how they're put together so that you can then respond to them appropriately, depending on your expertise. And these you have to prepare for. So you need to have, what I have is a Google Drive. And in my Google Drive, I have all these documents that I need to pull from. And then I'm ready to pull from those and prepare my written response at request. And so I'm able to respond to one of them in 4 or 5 days, or sometimes I'll have a whole month to respond to them. So, but you have to be ready to go. Okay. So what is a request for proposal? Just clearly, it is a solicitation. They're looking to receive information from you in a bidding capacity. They're comparing you to others. Okay. And it is by some agency or company interested in the procurement of that valuable asset, that service. And they're looking for across the board at potential suppliers to submit a business proposal back to them. Okay. But just to restate, it is a solicitation. So they're looking for you to respond. The first thing I always hear is, I picked this up, Mark, it's an RFP, but it looks like it's already a done deal. The fact is, it's not. When they issue a request for proposal, they're looking for responses. So be prepared to respond to those. Don't just ignore them. Even often, because sometimes they'll go out and, when they're writing them, they're lifting the information from other RFPs. So it may look that way. It's just not the case. Governments can't go out there and recreate every single request, especially the smaller, the medium-sized governments. So that's why it may seem that way. But they're looking for you to respond to them. So take them seriously. There's just too many methods for governments to go out and purchase directly from someone without requiring a bid. So they can go ahead and do that. They can do sole source. They can do justification. So when they get to the trouble of writing a request for proposal, they really do want your response. So there are typical parts of an RFP that you're going to want to watch for. Okay, this includes statement of work, technical specifications, schedule, list of deliverables, contract terms and conditions, format of proposal, qualification experience, the cost breakdown, and evaluation criteria. Sometimes they're outlined and they are basically in that same list, so you can just really quickly pick it up and see those. Other times it's a mix, so they might mix the technical specifications and the list of deliverables. So be aware of that. Whenever you look at the RFP, you should step back and really fragment it so that you have it in a standardized way. And I do this frequently within a Google Drive. So I will look at the statement of work. This is going to be like a paragraph, maybe a 2-paragraph situation, but it should always be clear. When I teach graduate students how to write RFPs for governments, I talk to them first about ABCs of writing. Accuracy, brevity, clarity. The 3 should always be in the statement of work. So when you pick it up, you should know what they're looking for, and it should speak to you. And so you should say, yeah, I can do this. If you can't say that when you first read it, you really should just move along. There's enough work in government sector, say $6 trillion marketplace now, that you will find other opportunity. So it really does need to speak to you whenever you see that, and you'll learn how to do that. And oftentimes I'll call attention to something that I refer to as indicators of success. And so what I'll do in my once again, in a Google spreadsheet of some sort, I'll put that statement of work, and then I'm going to start laying out some indicators. For example, size of the organization, the volume of something, and so forth. You'll find those and start recording that data, and you'll see which ones you win at, and then you'll start marking those. And so when you see those indicators, you've got yourself a potential win, and you focus solely on what I try to do is focus on those, and then I'll have a higher hit rate. And I've won about 350, 400 contracts nationally in some 34 states. So that technique does work. Okay. But the statement of work should really lift itself off the page, and you should say, this is what I do. The technical specifications, governments will lay out exactly what they expect. But once again, they're going to probably ask you as a subject matter expert to help them respond to that. So they'll list those technical specifications, but in the same time, they're going to have also the list of deliverables in order for you to accomplish those. And when you present your proposal, you need to focus on those items first. There is a natural tendency from an entrepreneur to be creative, and that's how we are successful in our businesses. But in the case of working with government, you really should step back, because the first person you're trying to get by is the procurement officer, and that procurement officer is there to make sure you follow the rules and that you respond technically to what they're seeking. So you need to address the technical specs. I really don't add additional information if unless it's absolutely critical. I only speak to what they're asking me on the first go around. I can always you're going to the second go around. You're actually going to be in the room with decision makers, and at that point, you can make some changes if you need to and expand. Okay, but the technical specifications listed there, and they typically are itemized, and you'll want to make sure that you address each one of those. Never leave anything unspoken. So if you have a technical spec there that you can't provide, then you need to tell them that, or seek out an alternative and provide that alternative. Okay, and in sense that it might be a subcontractor that you work with, or somebody who's working in the field that is a little bit better at this than you are, and so you may want to bring them in and build that. The schedule really is two parts of schedule. The first part is the schedule of returning your response. Okay, so pay attention to those. This is when there's going to be a pre-bid meeting, when there's going to what time will they give answers to questions that you might have. When is the actual bid due? What is it going to be? Eastern time? Is it going to be Central time? Even like this session here, I'll have an hour from now. I'll have a lot of folks hitting the reply and trying to join the meeting because they didn't have the timing. I spoke specifically to Eastern Standard Time, so you need to make sure that you're aware of that going into it. And so that's on the schedule side itself. On the other side, they're going to give you a schedule of those deliverables. This actually is a part where you will deal with pricing mechanisms. And so oftentimes whenever I'm responding, I will actually go in and, mine maybe half a payment up front or a third up front, and then a third when I deliver something through the middle, and then at the end, final payment. So sometimes that drives the actual pricing. And they could tell you that in your own individual industry, or you're asking for product to be delivered and you need some funding up front and then some funding when it's actually delivered. So that will describe, that will help you in the pricing structure as well. But the schedule itself, pay attention to it, know the dates, know the times, give yourself enough time to respond, and then make sure that you could fulfill the deliverables within the schedule they give you. The last thing you want to do is promise something that you can't do. Okay, that'll kill your business with government. So if you tell them that you're going to have the project done in 4 months, then you need to have the project done in 4 months. Okay, whatever is the requirement. So make sure you pay particular attention to that. Give yourself a little bit more time if you need to. This is important because in government, in the decision making, I'm going to talk about evaluation criteria in just a minute. But the overriding evaluation criteria is I'm not embarrassed as a procurement officer. Okay, so that's the last thing they want to do. They don't want to go in and recommend you as a company, and then it'd be a failed project. And if that happens, you just don't get recommendations in the future. And so make sure that you can deliver. And if they don't necessarily always want low price, they want you to be able to be comfortable and you're making some money. So that's going to make you eager, and you're going to do a good job, because that's what they want at the end, is going back to their city council, their county commission, saying, we had success with this project, and Mark Knowles did a great job. Okay, so that's what they want to do. But when you go through there, make sure you pay attention to the contract terms and conditions. This is often, what I've referred to as your profit center. They tell you exactly how they want you to do things, and you're going to be able to do it. So you read through, they typically are included in any RFP. If they're not, then kind of see in the RFP, you can typically pull out what they really are referring to as a contract. Start writing those items down. Okay, that's how you're going to drive that's going to really drive whether or not you're going to, at the end of the day, go have profit. If I don't have a contract term in the proposed RFP that they're giving me, then I will give them one back. But always remember that the government, they really don't make any changes to their contracts. Well, you're going to have to live with what they're telling you. Okay, they're not going to give you things like indemnification. They're not going to actually have payment requirements. And so go in there. They'll always have conditions. When somebody asked me the other day, because here we are in an election. I don't want to get too much politics in this. Stay away from it. But we saw in the past where government closed and they shut down for months, and so there you could find yourself in a situation where there's going to be delayed payments. You have to be aware of that and make sure you can read that and you understand that, and you are able to fulfill the contract regardless. Okay, they almost always, this has happened a couple of times, always catch up, but it's very concerning to a small business when you're counting on that and then they're not able to fulfill payment. The format of proposal, whenever you go in, they're going to tell you exactly how they want you to respond. The primary reason is because they want to be able to compare everybody with each other. Okay. And so make sure you follow their format. If they only want 10 pages, only give them 10 pages. You don't want to give them 11 and get disqualified. Okay. They're very serious about that. The procurement officer is checking off the boxes, making sure that you fulfill what they're asking you to. I'm going to show you some samples. But if they want one section, because what I always do is I have a sample RFP for my company that if you want to hire us, this is what you need to ask for. Okay. That way, sometimes I can just market that to the government and they can just take what I give them and use that potentially. That's why you see sometimes something maybe it looks like it's been written for your competitor, but they just literally got the information from someone else. And so whenever I do that, so if they actually make some changes, I don't need to go back and give my RFP back to them the same way I would have proposed if I had written it. It makes sure that makes sense. I might have to rearrange things. They may want qualifications and experience up front in the first section. They may want contract terms at the last section. So make sure you juggle that around as appropriate. Okay, you should have those, but typically have those already written in your Google Drive, and you're just making some modifications for that individual project. Qualifications and experience, you should sit down and write why you're so great. Okay, make sure you and brag and define your company. If you don't define yourself, somebody else will. That's a Alexander Haig quote. I abbreviated that, but somebody's going to define you if you don't. So make sure you've got that qualifications statement, the capability statement spelled out. You got all your NAICS codes, you got all your NIGP commodity codes that are assigned to you. You have your certifications that you have those. And sometimes we don't have exactly what they're looking for, and we have to sell ourselves. It's no different than business. So you've got some past experience. Pull that in. A lot of times, you may not have a government contract at this point when I'm talking to you, but you have past experience and you can use that. Okay. If you do have a government contract and you have multiple ones, for example, I've worked in a lot of different states. If I'm bidding in or responding to a contract in Tennessee, I use Tennessee references. Okay. And qualifications related to that. Spell out my experience in that area. Okay. Now tie something to them that they're looking for. The cost breakdown. Here they're going to tell you how to break down your response back to them in terms of, so they can do a comparative analysis on the price. This is typically in RFPs sealed and put aside until they verify everything else. Verify that you're qualified. Verify that you can do the deliverables, that you understand the technical specifications. So those are oftentimes more important, that you have the ability to follow instructions. And so that's all spelled out in the evaluation criteria. The good thing about RFP is they almost always give you a matrix of some sort, and you can go back and score yourself. There's no school of scoring that's out there. Okay. So take what you do, pull out that evaluation criteria, get a couple of individuals on your team, have them evaluate yourself, evaluate your proposal that's been sent back. You'll have a pretty high match to what the government will actually score you. Okay. So make sure you understand that and you work through that. So these are the typical parts of the RFP. You should always watch for those. One of the quotes also, and I spoke to you earlier about the statement of work and how you really want it should really stand out to you. And so there's a quote by Coldplay. You're the one that I wanted to find. So when you read that RFP and when you really see that statement of work and you see those technical specifications, you see the schedule, you see the deliverables, the contract terms you can live with, then you know it's the one that you want to find. Okay. Don't waste your time on anything that doesn't speak to you right away. Okay. It's a once again $6 trillion marketplace. There's 5,000 calls for bids and proposals every single day. You'll have opportunity presented to you. Don't waste your time on that, which you're not going to probably end up winning anyway. That's not the same as aspiration. Okay. So sometimes I go out and I want to move up and move ahead. I work in traditional size organizations, maybe 10,000 to 40,000 population, and I see a big contract for $100,000 population. I might pursue that just to check, just to see, see how I do in that response. And so that's a little bit different. So you're not really expecting that, but you're trying to grow. That's just a different approach. Otherwise, your bread and butter, make sure they're the ones that you want to find it. Always remember that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. And this is an important quote specifically with government contracting. Oftentimes you'll have a 2-3 day turnaround And you can get that done in 2 or 3 days if you have all your work ready to go. You have all your document responses ready to go. At the same time, they may give you a 2-month response time. Don't spend everything the first 2 or 3 days and fire that off. Wait. Typically, the ones that are open-ended for that long, there's going to be some changes. They understand that. There are going to be some addendums. You need to wait. Okay. And the last thing that you're going to do is fill up most likely an addendum where you have to say, I've read all the other changes that have come about. Okay. So traditionally, when there's a longer period of time, they recognize there's going to be changes in that process. And so wait until you get closer to the due date before you respond to send it back. I typically wait until about 3 days out, and then I'll FedEx it to the organization in the appropriate time. A lot of times now, it's just uploading those technically, and you're able to go in there and do that technically. But also give yourself, the last thing you want to do is try to upload a file. That I tried to do this other day with the government, and it was too big, and it created problems for me. And I waited to a point where it's almost too late to do it, and I had to send a document by a travel disk. Actually, I've learned about a new service that can compress it, but it took a while to do that, so I wasn't quite sure. So make sure you also prepare for those changes that can occur. Tips: when you're looking at a proposal, read the entire proposal. Okay, read it all the way through, and then set it aside. Think about the areas that we discussed here today: the statement of work, technical specs, the list of deliverables, most importantly. Okay, set aside though. Talk to colleagues about it. Make sure it's a good fit for your organization. Make sure you're able to fulfill the responsibilities, and then complete the proposal back to them in one setting. But then go back and review it at that time. Hold on to it until you see all those addendums. But try to do it all at once, and then you'll know what you need and what you don't have, and you'll have it ready to go. There's going to be a lot of times individual documents that you have to attach some things that are notarized. So you have to give yourself enough time to do that. And so you will oftentimes have those ready to go in that Google Drive I'm talking about, but you still have to have the notarization for every single form. So you might have a save certificate or e-verify, things like that. Sometimes those takes you a little bit of time to do. So go out there and prepare that, okay? And then complete that proposal and get it ready to go. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in the only source of knowledge is experience. So what I want to do is just dive into a couple of RFPs that we've seen lately. And oftentimes when I come to GovDirections, and RFP delivery is a new service that we're offered. I'm going to demonstrate it today, as I mentioned to you. But you'll end up really at our front page, and you also will end up with a keyword search functionality, or potentially even popular bids you might be looking at, or just a general set up by industries themselves. We serve 174 industries. Right now, we've got about 31,400 active bids. The new RFP delivery side is geo-based. Your username and password should work with this if you're currently at GovDirections member. If you're not, you sign up for one, you'll sign up for both. There's no additional cost for this. Okay. And I would ask if you maintain your mute unless we have a question. So I'll keep that there. So when I come in, I potentially would use keyword functionality. The new site's a little bit different. It's more open-ended, but I do compensation studies. I'm going to focus in on that as a search here. And when you do search, it's going to be a quick, easy to use search. Allows you to share information nowadays with others, but it's going to highlight those keywords for you. In addition, we're going to give you other ways to come and look at data and do some searches. They'll be quicker for you, specifically set asides, things of that nature that you might be looking for. These are active compensation studies. Right now, we're only focused, of course, at GovDirections on active listings. I can actually go in now and map it, see where those projects are at. This is particularly helpful if you're in the business of painting or plumbing or areas where you want to make sure you're working in a region, but you can zero in on these projects and take a look at them. Okay, here's one in Tennessee that's close to me. I'm in Atlanta, so it helps me geographically see where things are at. This is a particular project due December 1st. I can click through. I can see this is for Spring Hill, Tennessee. It is a sealed bid. Okay. The information related to it, who to contact. Once again, it's all on the map there. I can go take a look at the project. Moving into the actual document. Here, seeing announcements, contact information, details like that. I see here, this is the RFP itself. Open up the RFP. Okay. And sometimes they're real formal. They'll have a cover letter. They'll have other things. This one looks like it's a straight shot to you. Okay. This is going to, I'm going to look through here some general information, really that scope of work. I'm going to start pulling out, as I mentioned earlier, some indicators of success. The first of which is, for me, is that it's close to where I'm located. Okay, that might be an indicator. It's in Tennessee. I do pretty well in Tennessee when I'm working. I'm also, my main contact person is a human resource director. It's also an indicator. If I'm dealing with directly with an HR person or a finance person, I typically have more success. Okay, so these are things you start picking up on. I'm going to start also picking up on some key parts of it, sort of the format of the proposal, how you're going to respond. They want a copy of the proposal. They want 3. Actually, there's 4, an original and 3 copies. Okay, so when I send it back to them, I'm going to have printouts of original and 3 copies. And then I'm also going to have to put my proposal on an electronic copy on a flash drive. So I'm going to go ahead and start building that spreadsheet, put that check marks to make sure I don't miss these minor things. Because if I miss one of these, they're going to rule me ineligible. Okay, so they will also tell me how they want it delivered. This one's not electronic. This is going to be hand delivered by courier or hand delivered. Okay, so I need to make sure I give myself enough time to get it to them. Who it's going to go to, that's always critical. We don't want to miss that. That's typically related to a cone of silence, and you can't reach out to anyone else. You need to go directly to the city recorder on this, and they have to see it first. And most likely when they open it up, it's going to be stamped and it's going to be certified that it's been sealed. Okay, so these are things that are key. In this particular case, they don't have a page number. I always tell my students to make sure you got a page number so you don't miss a page for some reason when someone prints this out. But I'm going to print this out if I'm serious about it, and I'm going to lay it in front of me. And so the first thing I'm going to do is write that page number so I don't lose the order of things. Okay, so they give me and also here they want no more than 20 pages or 10 pages double-sided. Okay, no covers divided. Actually, they should say excluding cover and dividers. You can't count those. Okay, or the cover letter. You can give them a cover letter. It doesn't count as your 20 pages. These are just minor things, but they are really important in government contracting. Okay, so you want to, this is a check mark. These are items you're going to list, and you're going to have a check to make sure you did everything exactly as they ask you to. Okay, so their introduction here is very quick, to the point. They just want somebody to update their plan. Okay, very general. That's actually a good thing, and that catches my attention. Okay, this is where they're at. They're located off near Nashville. That's a cost issue, and how to get there from where I'm at. How many people, how many citizens in their area, the population? That's an indicator of success. I'm right in my wheelhouse. Okay, 50,000, 10 to 50,000. I'm good at it. Okay, they employ over 300 FTE workers. That's a part. That's like a widget number for me. That's actually right away. I know in this here speaking to it's going to be about $75,000 for this project. I'm going to know that because in the past I've looked at these type projects and I've looked at that primary indicator or the number in the population, and I've looked at projects and the price they end up at, and then in my head I know that it's about $2.25 for the each FTE, and so that it builds that up. So $225, I believe, is what I would do there. So it adds up, okay, and that's kind of helps you in terms of pricing. I also look and see how many departments they have. This is another. This helps you know where you can build your teams and your contracting, because you're not an expert in everything. In this particular situation, this is telling me as someone who does this work, I'm going to need to reach out to individuals who have expertise in utilities and public works to build my team, okay, and they're going to expect that, okay, and so some other details, and then they're going to give me the scope of services. This is what they want to do. This starts measuring pricing again. You're going to have so many meetings that you attend. You're going to have to do so many jobs, the products. You're going to have to also do some educational process. So these are hourly rates typically, or some other rate. I'm going to assign a price to it. It's going to allow me to do that. Okay, and they're going to step through 1 through 6. This is all they want me to do. Okay, I don't need to add a 7, 8, or 9. I may think they need to do something else. That is not what they're asking me to do here. I don't want to do that until I get past the basic requirements, because this is what they're going to compare me against. If I add in another item that's going to cost me a few $1,000s more, that puts me in a disadvantage, even though I know they may need that. Okay, and I'm not going to do that until I get in the door. The deliverables, they're going to show that how they want.
send to them how they want you to deal with these. And in this particular case here, this is going to help also drive my pricing structure. Maybe not my overall price, but how I'm going to get paid. The government's going to look for you to tell them how you need to get paid. Sometimes they will tell you this is how they have to pay you. Otherwise, they want you to tell them, I need this much upfront. I need this at this point of deliverable, and then a final number when we're complete. Okay. And this most likely is going to be this exit conference. Okay. And know that whenever you go in and price, these are the only meetings they expect you to price out. So they want you on site, on location 4 times, price out 4 times. If you have to be there 5, 6, 7 times, that's going to be an additional negotiation factor. Okay. So you're only going to do what they're requesting in this type of response. And they have 11 individual deliverables, and I'm going to speak to all 11, and I'm going to speak to all 11 in the order that they have asked me. Okay. So if I have answers to these questions in a traditional way, am I explaining what I do in an exit conference? Have a paragraph already written? I'm going to drop it in item number 6 in my proposal. Okay. I'm not going to drop it in first. So it's important that you do, because that's how they're going through and they're going to evaluate. Items at that point, they're going to start giving you some supplemental requirements that they have, like insurance, for example. And so let's just say you got $1 million to 500 is what they're asking for. Excuse me, $1 million to 5 million. And maybe I have 500,000 to $1 million. Okay, I'm not going to go out and insure myself at this level until I win the contract. Okay, I don't need to absorb that cost until I know I've got the contract. So what you would traditionally do in this situation is you get your insurance person to give you a letter saying you're insurable, and then you put that in and say, if I win the contract, then I'll fulfill this requirement. And in there's they'll allow you to do that. Okay, most of the times in your business, it's going to be standard. Okay, what you see in one, you'll see in all. Okay, so traditionally you'll have that, but just in case you don't go out and invest a lot until you win a contract. Okay, the format they're telling you earlier, we saw that in no more than 20 pages. You do get to add on some things like a cover sheet, but when you do that 20 pages, you can do it in this particular order. Okay, and item number 1, they want a brief overview. Okay, when they say brief, they don't mean that they need 3 pages about yourself. Okay, they want a brief, accuracy, brevity, clarity. Okay, so practice at that. Sometimes you may have a paragraph already written about your company. Other times they want it more detailed. And you have a page written about your company. Okay, so you pull them in at different proposal requirements and add it in. But the first thing they want to see when you submit it is a overview of your company. Give them that first. Your experience and expertise of project team members, you should have that ready to go. Pulling it from that list, and providing any certifications, keep it up to date. These items also should match what you might have on your capability statement, because the next step, you're going to actually get in the door and you're going to make a pitch, and they'll be looking at your proposal, and in front of you, then you're also going to put as a placard some sort of your capability statement, so they can see that, and that's what's going to catch their attention. You're going to add in other information about you. You're going to have some visuals and things like that. So you want to make sure it matches what you have in your proposal. They want a work plan. Okay, they want their expectations, they want the references, and they want it in this order. Okay, some sample work, and this is going to be my 20 pages. I can't go over 20 pages. Okay, you might have issues like litigation letters. You just have it ready to go. Okay, and you have that, so you're not scrambling to get that prepared. These are these typical things. Everything I see here is typical in a response that I would have. Once I do it, I store it. I'm pulling from that Google Drive. I'm putting it in place and using it routinely over and over again. I'm making modifications, of course, that it fits this particular agency. And I'm speaking to the region, speaking to other common factors like the size of the organization in order to improve my ability to win. Cost proposal almost always is a separate sealed envelope. They don't look at cost until they prove that you are capable of doing the work. Okay, it's over and over and over again. Okay, don't indicate cost until on any proposal if they require this, because that's almost always a disqualifier. Okay, and every small thing you have could be a disqualifier. And here we go. There's the page number on this one, so it's at the bottom there. Okay, and so if we look in there, the good thing about government is they're going to tell you how they're going to make the decision. Decision making is a very difficult process in any sector, and government is even more difficult in the sense that they've got to always prove how they made a fair judgment call. And so they're going to tell you ahead of time how they're going to do that. Okay. And so you should pay attention to that. The selection process here, they're telling you it's going to be an independent review. Try to go back in. You can probably, In this particular case, I'm going to learn who that director of HR is, how the city council and how they work. And this information is publicly available. You can go onto their website, you can go in, you can drill in, you'll learn about that government before you submit the proposal. Oftentimes, if I go in and I see there's a contentious environment, I don't even bother. Okay, pay attention to that, things like that. Or if it is, I might jack up my price 20%. Okay, that means that it's going to cost you a little bit more to work with them. So you kind of learn when you can move your price up and when you need to do that, or make sure you're making profit. Okay, and then they're going to make a recommendation to the board of mayor and aldermen, and that's who will make the final decision. Okay, in this particular case, that's almost always the case. And I have a class where we teach how the organizational process works in government, and that's important because the final decision makers are the ones you really want to focus your attention on. Okay, in this particular case here, they're going to have a committee that's going to make a recommendation, and most likely the board and mayor will go through that and do what the committee recommends. But you can go in and look at the agendas of meetings or the recent minutes, and then we'll almost always have a summary of recent recommendations, and you'll see how many of those are contested and the ones that are easily accepted, and so you can get an environment look at the environment for the community as a whole, the flavor of the community, how they're making decisions. A lot of it nowadays, these things are recorded, these meetings, so you can go in and you can watch their meetings and you can see where they have issues at, and try when you make your response, address some of those things, and it helps you out in the process. In this particular case here, if you look at the evaluation, you get a score sheet. This is the one I said, pass this out to your friends, have them evaluate your proposal, and you'll get basically the same thing they do. So here they want to look at qualifications and experience, quality and responsiveness of proposal. If you can actually follow instructions, that's 20% of the weight. That's pretty heavy. Project approach and schedule. If you can meet the schedule, 20% of the approach. Relevant project experience, 20%. 80% of this proposal is your ability to respond and give them the right answer to what they're looking for in the project. Okay, 20% is cost. That's a low factor. You say, well, I just stress over and over again, get your qualifications and experience, your description of your company ready to go, that you're able to sell yourself in the right capacity, that your capability statement speaks to the right information, and you're going to always end up in the final for these. And what they're here primarily doing is getting you down to maybe 3 or 5 companies, and then you're going to go in there most likely and make a pitch directly to them, and then that's whenever you can really win the business if you know your stuff. Okay, so here they are, and they're telling you they're going to investigate any reference. So if you give them any reference, make sure you contact those references and tell them that they're going to get a call, because they will. Governments do that. Everything else you'll see on here, almost always, you have a timeline. They're going to tell you when they make a decision and so forth. But everything else is basically what you would see in any proposal. Nothing unusual in government. Read through it though. Make sure that you understand that when you're working with government, it's a one-sided transaction. Okay, you're doing exactly what they're asking you to. They have rules and regulations in place. They're there. I always pull out about the offer and acceptance period. This one's 90 days that it makes the proposal good for. So you need to be prepared to honor that price for 90 days. If they don't speak to that, you should give them a call. I mean, you should say, my price is good up until this point. Okay, and give them a little bit of time, but you need to have the ability to step away from that price. We saw this when COVID, individuals bid and then they got deferred, and then they were expecting them to maintain the exact same price, and then we saw escalation in price, and that can create problems for both parties. Okay, so here's a sample RFP that I've walked through for you. It's in an experiential way in order to give you the real live situation. Every one of them, of course, is different. But when you take a look at a number of those that you see in your industry, and before you respond, and you'll do a better job at it. But don't wait too long. They shouldn't be. They look hard, but you just got to do them. Okay, you got to do one, go through it, learn, and you'll have success. Okay, there's just so much opportunity in the government sector. $6 trillion marketplace right now in the state, local, and federal sector. It's the largest spending period in American history. Take a moment, and you'll do well. So thank you for joining us today. If you do have any questions, be glad to try to answer a question. I'll hang out for just a few minutes, but I am turning off the YouTube.